When I was overseas, there were quite a few games that I can remember playing to pass the time. Final Fantasy X and X2, although we're not going to talk about that. Chaos Legion, Freedom Fighters, Devil May Cry 1, and sadly 2. Hell, myself and my roommates even got through nearly 20 seasons of Madden 2004 franchise mode, with my one roommate relocating his team, hiring Brett Favre as his head coach, and renaming the team the Bitch Slappers. But another game that I remember really enjoying was the game we're looking at today, Dead to Rights. Does it hold up? Oh yeah, it does. One word of warning, my disc is damaged and freezes up after the opening intro video, so I had to resort to emulation in order to record this footage. I don't think there was any issues other than one small graphical hiccup, so we can roll with it. In Dead to Rights, you play as a guy named Slate, a canine cop in Grant City who is tasked with checking out a report of gunshots at a local construction site. When he gets there, by smashing through the construction gates, which is a normal everyday action, he finds some angry workers that open fire on him. The first chapter of the game is a large tutorial stage, giving you all of the mechanics to the game, but I'll get to the gameplay in a bit. At the end of the chapter, Slate finds his father laying on the ground in a puddle of blood, and Slate sets out to find out who did it and why. A short while later, Slate is framed in killing a local businessman that may have known what was going on, and from there, Slate works underground in trying to solve the mystery. While he's evading the police to make sure he doesn't get thrown back into prison, he'll be dodging more construction workers, other prisoners, security officers, and even armed clowns. That's right, clowns. Well, they are just wearing clown masks, but the ID shown over their life meter is clown, so yeah, clowns. The game does rely heavily on its story, so I won't go too much further into the plot. There are scenes rendered in both CGI and also the in-game engine that help further the idea of what's going on, although you'll learn that many characters disappeared quickly after being introduced, and of course there are plenty of twists to keep you guessing on what is going to happen next. Now, I will admit that although the opening video is freaking badass, as in a lot of Namco games, it has no bearing on the goings-ons in the game itself. Don't get me wrong, definitely watch it, but don't think that you're going to miss something in the video that you won't know what's going on in the actual game. Honestly, I thought about showing you the entire opening CGI video, but it is a bit long and I'm sure it's on YouTube if you really want to watch it. I just ask that you watch that after you're done watching my video because you were probably here first. So you can probably tell that Dead to Rights is a third-person action game. It actually combines a few different gameplay styles, mostly a brawler style and a shooting style. The shooting is more common, but you can bring out Slate's fists at any time. I'll talk about the melee first since it's easier. The combat is simple. Although there's no lock-on button to target a specific enemy, this almost never causes a problem. Pressing X throws a punch, square kicks, and R1 blocks, although defense in this case is not the best offense, which I'll explain in a minute. Although you'll probably just want to focus on using X to throw a 4-punch combo, you can also mix up kicks and punches to create some rudimentary combos. The ones I found useful are 3 punches and then a kick to push the enemy away, or 2 punches and a kick to do a neat high kick. Thankfully, you can hit multiple enemies at once, which is good since in later levels you will be swarmed by a half-dozen thugs. So about those defenses. Again, you can press a key to throw up your arms to block strikes, but you will still take damage, although very minor. In addition, it will drain the stamina bar, but you probably won't notice that too much, as the stamina does tend to replenish quickly. In fact, the only time it really becomes a problem was during one of the late game boss battles, and even then, it's not a huge issue. No, the biggest problem is that blocking seems delayed when pressing R1, often rendering blocking useless. This is because after you finish your offensive attack, enemies will often pounce immediately before you're able to block. And once you are being attacked, you can't really interrupt the attack, although your enemies can. This makes some of the battles a bit frustrating, since your defenses are paper thin, but the enemy can react immediately after your onslaught. Okay, so now that the hand-to-hand combat portions of the game have been touched upon, let's move on to the main meat of the game, the gunplay. Here's where the game is a bit different than most other third-person shooters. In essence, the gameplay is more like an arcade game than a normal console game. Here's how it works. Slate targets enemies by pressing and holding R1. You'll see a targeting reticule appear on the screen and zoom in on the closest threat. You can then press X to shoot them down. In order to select a new target, you can either use the right analog stick, or at least then again press and hold the R1 button. Just because an enemy dies doesn't mean the target will automatically move on. Instead, the target will turn blue to signify the thing that you're shooting isn't breathing anymore. There are other colors you need to worry about, mostly because they dictate how accurate your shots are going to be. Green means that they're not really going to hit, yellow means that some bullets will strike, and red is the signal to light them up. Your shots also seem to do more damage when the cursor is red, so that's something to keep in mind. One catch with the targeting system is that it doesn't always go to the threat that you intend to take down first. I've had to fight the R1 button to target the enemy that I felt was the biggest threat, like, I don't know, the guy wielding a shotgun over a pistol. You get used to it, but I've died a few times due to this. Another problem that I found is that the enemies are pinpoint accurate, especially in late game scenarios. They can immediately start shooting at you as soon as you turn a corner, and I've already witnessed them trying to shoot me through walls. Not exactly fair now, is it? Due to frequent checkpoints, you do get to memorize where your enemies are and if there are an infinite amount of troops until you complete the objectives, so you will be able to persevere through the game no matter how difficult things may seem to be getting. Also, whenever you are resurrected from death, if you are below 50% health, you are given that much. So if you hit a checkpoint with a sliver of health, the game gives you that extra bonus upon death. So that's nice of them. So what kind of fun guns do you get to use? Well, there are a lot of weapons available. About a half dozen forms of pistols, multiple automatic shotguns, the typical AK and M4, a machine gun, grenade launchers, and so on. But there's a catch, and it's something that helps lend to the arcade feel. There are no reloads. And that's not like Doom where you keep the weapon and just never reload. No. Instead, the way the game works is that if Slate runs out of ammo in the gun he's carrying, he simply throws it away. Each weapon has different max ammo available, and if you pick up another copy of the weapon you're already carrying, you just receive more ammo for it, but reloading is still not required. Because of the way that this all works, gameplay remains fresh throughout the game. Even though the majority of areas result in entering the room, killing the thugs, finding a key, killing more thugs that appear, exiting the room, and repeat. But because you are constantly picking up new weapons and throwing them away once you complete what's in their clip, it always feels like you're using different tactics. Each weapon has different characteristics, and you'll find some that feel more suitable to your mission than others. You'll probably learn shotguns are the best all-around tool, since they can take down most threats in 1 or 2 close quarters blasts. Assault rifles are amazing for long range, and pistols are great all-around weapons. But 2 weapons you should never touch in most circumstances would be something you wouldn't expect: the 2 sniper rifles. They are almost always completely useless. If you are firing them using the normal R1 mechanics, they do so little damage that you'll probably be dead before you take down that one enemy. Plus, I should add in that the PSG-1, a semi-automatic, isn't even quick. It fires like a bolt action. You can bring up a manual aim on all the weapons using R2, but it's almost never required. However, using the manual aim with these sniper rifles will bring up a sniper scope, and zooming in will result in the same minuscule damage amounts unless you are able to strike the enemy with a headshot. That's the only time the sniper rifles are useful. And since you can't manually drop weapons, and there is a max amount of guns that you can carry at once, I've already shot the sniper rifles dry so that I can pick up something more useful. No, you won't hit the max carry limit often, but when you do, just fire off whatever rounds and guns you don't like. There are ways to prevent yourself from taking too much damage. Obviously, armor is a thing, and it really does help soak up the bullets to protect your vitality. You can also use your dog, Shadow, to kill off any nearby thug and have him bring their weapon to you, making this really useful when you are low or completely empty on ammo. Shadow isn't always available though, and he does require a small cooldown before being able to use him again. Something weird about having a dog like this immediately go for the jugular each time and no enemy nearby attempts to shoot him, but I guess everyone is a dog fan in this game. But back on defending yourself properly. You can also use human shields. When approaching an enemy while you have a weapon equipped, pressing circle will take the enemy hostage, and you can move around slowly while still targeting and shooting. If any enemy tries to shoot you, they'll oftentimes hit their pal instead. There's only one time that I can recall where using a human shield is actually mandatory, but it is beneficial in almost all situations. You can also disarm your enemies if you care to get that close. By putting your weapon away by pressing down on the D-pad, or L2, Slate will holster his guns. Now, if you press circle at an armed enemy, Slate will take them down and steal their weapon. If you have someone pestering you, this is the quickest way to strike them down, but do keep in mind that when doing this, along with using Shadow, you can still take damage, although it does seem that the enemies will hold off on shooting so much when performing these actions. You would think that all of this chaos of frequently swapping weapons, switching enemy targets, and sticking your pup on the thugs would be difficult to follow, but it's actually not. The gameplay is actually really smooth, more than you would possibly expect in a game like this. To make things even better, even if you did fail, the game loads nearly instantly. You'll see a black screen for maybe a second or so, but then you're back on the action. This is good because there are some segments that can get really frustrating, so you may die often. Perhaps part of the reason why the loading is so quick is that many of the environments are repeated. Many locations have to be revisited throughout your quest, which kinda sucks, but at least there are reasons given for you to coming back. The story does a good job of relinquishing all relevant information to you, so you know exactly what's going on. The game does have a few minigames included to help keep things fresh for you, but honestly, they kinda feel tacked on. Some aren't too bad, and most are over quickly, like the lockpicking. The bomb defusal is a bit longer, but it's still kind of fun to navigate the little mercury ball carefully through the maze. But others are just dumb button mashing projects. You'll have to hold your breath while getting drowned, and two of the games, the weightlifting and arm wrestling, you have to mash buttons and then hit a different button to win. And I should mention that you also get to play a sort of quick time game as a stripper. Let's move on to the graphics. I can't say much about the sound because it's typical PS2 action game stuff. I guess I can say that the voice acting is hit or miss, but that's normal for this era. But I do want to talk about the visuals because they are really well done. You'll see blood and bullet casings remain in the rooms, although the bodies of your victims won't stick around, which is a shame. You can also see plenty of neat reflections on things like standing water. It's not something I was expecting to see. I will say that the in-engine rendered scenes, where there's dialogue, the characters don't move their mouths, but it doesn't detract from the action too much. Only one last thing to mention. With the gritty story, the hero's quips, the constant shooting, and slow motion dives that honestly aren't needed in a game like this, does it remind you of another game? I don't know, Max Payne maybe? Yeah, there were more than a handful of times when playing Dead to Rights that I thought of Remedy's blockbuster title. Granted, this is actually a bit smoother, but I will admit I enjoyed Max Payne's story and presentation more, but Dead to Rights definitely copies its style well. Okay, I have one more thing, and it's quick and just an observation I had. Your enemies are given types, like clown, security, and stuff like that. But in the construction area, you're fighting literally dozens of foremen and supervisors. How many friggin' foremen and supervisors do you need on a job site? Pretty sure they outnumber the normal peon workers. And that's all I got for Dead to Rights. It's an incredibly smooth, semi-challenging third-person shooter with frantic gameplay that all comes together nicely. There were a few sequels made, but I haven't tried any of them yet. It's not terribly expensive, so if it looks like something that's up your alley, definitely give it a go. Final score? 6 out of 7. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.